Hi, everybody, and welcome to this next video on different genres that we will deal with in the Writing Center. In a previous video, we covered how to write a resume, and so I'm following up by talking about how to write a cover letter. Again, this is probably one of the more common genres you will encounter aside from course essays. Just about every college student needs to apply for jobs when it comes time to graduate, and sometimes also while they are going to school. And a cover letter can be kind of a difficult genre. It's unfamiliar to most people when they're first getting started with one, and there's kind of some tricky elements to it. So I'm going to cover basically both how to write a cover letter here, but also how to help somebody write a cover letter. And this is a slide deck that I'm also going to make available on Canvas because it is designed to kind of also help an individual write a cover letter on their own. It contains a lot of kind of stock phrases or kind of typical expressions that you'll see in a lot of cover letters that students can use as models and examples. Okay, so one of the first things you will need to deal with, both in writing a cover letter and in helping somebody write a cover letter, is getting comfortable with the format of a business letter. And here's where I'll say that the business letter genre is antiquated. This is from a time when we sent all our correspondence through the mail, which was like maybe back when I was a child. But by the time I became an adult, we were doing all of this on email anyway. But nevertheless, the kind of classic business letter format reads to a lot of people as professional. Okay. And so I'm going to just show you what it typically entails. Okay. So this image you see here is actually from a Word template, business letter template. So you can actually just go find this by opening up a more recent version of Word and looking for cover letter templates. And typically it has your name and contact information at the top. Then it has a date, and there's like a significant amount of space between your info and the date. And then it has the recipient's name, title, and mailing address. And again, like I said, this is an antiquated convention. I would say that in the current paradigm, it is really not that essential to include the recipient's name and address. Um, but it is a good idea to include your contact information. And that's because they need to know how to get in touch with you. And just, speaking from experience, sometimes these things will wind up, maybe getting printed out or just stuck in a shared folder somewhere in kind of the company drive. And so they don't necessarily have access to your original email or anything like that. And so having your, at least your phone and email clearly printed on the cover letter lets them know how to contact you. So this part is really important. This one, probably nobody will really miss it, but nevertheless, this is what a standard business letter looks like. And then there's, you use a formal greeting. Okay. So if you know the person who you will be writing to, so if, for example, the name of the hiring manager is in the job ad, which happens sometimes or the HR manager, because it will sometimes a job ad will say, with questions, contact so and so. That happens every once in a while. Probably not in most cases, but sometimes. It's also typically possible to go and look up the name of who is likely to be collecting these applications. So just go Google the company and figure out who their HR manager is, or figure out who is the head of the department that you are applying to. So it's a good idea to try, if you can, to address the letter to the person who's going to be reading it. But if not, using a generic greeting like "Dear hiring manager," "Dear sir or madam," although that's very, very formal. I typically go with "Dear hiring manager," or for academic jobs, "Dear selection committee" or "Dear search committee," something like that. That will be just fine. Okay, and again, just like with resumes, there are lots of different templates out there for formatting business letters to look really, really nice. Of course, you can absolutely open up a document and do this all of yourself. But if somebody's already done the work for you, why not take advantage of it? So showing students where to find templates And again, some of the same places as with resumes, packaged with word processing software, in Microsoft Word, in Pages, in Google Docs, and also, on the fancy design places like Zeti or Canva. Okay, so beyond the format, you need to fill it up with content, right? You need to actually say something about yourself. And there is kind of a typical 4-paragraph structure that tends to work for cover letters. And this is something that I have learned over years and years and years and years and years and years and years of helping students write cover letters for jobs across a range of industries, including for really highly competitive internships and entry-level jobs at like the top consulting companies like McKinsey. And this is also something that I have learned from regularly hearing from recruiters about what they want to see in a cover letter. So the standard 4-paragraph structure is you start with a paragraph that explains who you are and what you want. Okay. My name is such and such. I am a senior at Avila University, and I am writing to express my interest in the position of summer intern. Okay. So something to that effect. Basically, you say who you are and what position you're seeking. From there, you need to answer 3 questions. First of all, why this field? Okay, so why consulting? Why investment banking? Why marketing? Why medicine? Why psychology, etc. Okay, why you're interested in this field. Then why you're interested in that company or organization. And then why you? Why are you a good fit for this position? Okay, so why this field, why this company, and why you? Those are the 3 basic questions that you need to answer. The order of these paragraphs is not necessarily fixed. You can kind of mix and match, and you can even combine, because sometimes the why this field and why this company question can be answered in a single paragraph. Or you may need 2 paragraphs to talk about why you are the best candidate for that position. Or you may want to put the why you first and then talk about why the field and why the company last. And that is perfectly fine. So, that first paragraph really does need to go first. But the other 3, as long as these 3 questions are being answered, the writer can kind of arrange the paragraphs however they want. Okay, so if you are in a writing consultation in which a student walks in and says, I've never written a cover letter before, and I'd like some help getting started, then starting with this outline is like this is a great way to start. This tends to be really helpful because it can work as a brainstorming exercise. You can sit there and kind of make a list, that answers each of these questions, and then talk about how that can be arranged into like complete sentences and paragraphs. So the student can take that outline off and begin drafting themselves and bring it back to you to show you what they've done. So this is a really good place to start if you ever have a student come in and just say, I need to write a cover letter and I don't know how. Okay, just show them this. And again, I'll make this slide deck available on Canvas so you can go and access it when you need to. Okay, so getting into a little bit some more specifics. In paragraph 1, where you talk about who you are and what you want, the things that the writer needs to include are their current status. Okay, so typically for our purposes, where they are in school. I'm a sophomore, I'm a junior, I'm a senior, I'm expecting to graduate in May 2023, whatever it is. Okay, that's partly because it tells the recruiter where you are in your career and when you're available. Okay, you need to also indicate what position you're applying for. Yeah, it may feel obvious to you, but sometimes this is going to an HR manager. The company has 100 different positions open, and so they need to know what folder to stick this in. Okay, so make it clear from the very top what position you want. It is a good idea to indicate how you found out about the position. So for example, if you went to a recruitment event or like an information session for this company and you met somebody, that's a great thing to talk about. It shows that you kind of went out of your way to seek information about this particular opportunity. If this position was recommended to you by somebody, that's also a great signal. If you can say, I am a first year graduate student in psychology, And my professor, Dr. Branch, encouraged me to apply for this position. Um, that's a great signal. Okay, it indicates that there's some third party who thinks that you would be a good fit for this job. Okay, so indicate how you found out about it, and even if you found it on LinkedIn or Indeed, you can still say that. I am applying for the summer internship advertised on LinkedIn. Okay, that's totally fine because they like collecting lots of data and that kind of helps them out. So in addition, it's a great idea to conclude this paragraph with just a quick statement about why you want this job or why you think you're a fit. Okay, so I believe I can put my skills in X to excellent use in this environment, or I have demonstrated skills in X, Y, and Z that I think I could put to good use in this position. I'm eager to work in a company that values X and Y. Okay, so I've given these kind of phrases down here to kind of, again, as kind of a model or as inspiration for kind of what you can say in response to these questions. I've done the same for these future paragraphs. In talking about why you're interested in this field, sometimes it kind of helps to tell a story. How did you become interested in this area? I first became interested in data science when I took a computer science course with this professor. And since then, I've done X, Y, and Z. I then went to a data camp, a summer data camp, and have continued to develop my skills in this programming language. So kind of telling a little story about how you became interested in it. It's also a good idea if it's an entry-level position or an internship to talk about what your future goals are and how this position would help you achieve those goals. Keep in mind that with things like internships, these are typically supposed to be educational experiences and in addition to just employment. So talking about how this will help you achieve your goals and contributing to this field is a good idea. And also, why is this field a match for your particular skills? So stuff like, I have always been great at talking to people, or I've always been really good. I've always felt like I had a gift for active listening and for empathizing with people's problems, and that's why I've decided to become a therapist. Or I have a passion for working with children, and that's why I would like to teach third grade. That kind of thing. And again, I've given kind of some examples of phrases and expressions that can kind of work for this paragraph. When talking about why this organization and why this company, again, this doesn't have to be a whole paragraph. I've just, kind of use this as a heuristic. It could be a couple sentences at the end of the paragraph that talks about why you've chosen this field. But the purpose of this is to show that you're not just spamming applications. And, in this labor market, you can probably get away with it, but it's not always the case. And if you are really excited about a particular job opportunity, it is to your benefit to actually show it. So talk about why you want to work for this particular company. Okay. And it could be something related to, their particular mission or the clients that they serve or the projects that they work on. It could have something to do with what you've heard about their corporate values or their organizational values. If it's, say, a nonprofit or an educational institution, it could be something like, I want to work for this school district because this is where I grew up and this is where I went, and I want to give back in this case. So talking about why you want to work for this specific organization or company, again, just helps underline that you are specifically interested in them and not just sending out resumes to everybody with an open position. Okay, and again, this is also an opportunity to talk about any cases in which you've had contact with somebody who works for that company. So recruitment events you went to, like if there were employment fairs where you went and talked to somebody at a table, or if you have a classmate or a friend who works for that company or worked for them in the past, hopefully they're in good standing there. Maybe don't mention somebody who got fired or something like that. But highlighting people who you already know, especially if you think that they will speak highly of you, is a good idea. Okay, so again, doesn't necessarily need to be a whole paragraph, but should be at least a couple of sentences that just expresses your genuine interest. And then finally, what is for many people the hardest part or the easiest, I mean, it kind of depends on your personality, There's the part that talks about why you. And again, that could either be the first paragraph or it could come at the end. It just kind of depends on what feels natural in the writing. So this is where you talk about prior experiences, demonstrated skills that match the job requirements, okay? Your potential to bring value to that particular organization. Also an opportunity to kind of bring up good communication skills and teamwork and that kind of thing. This section, though, can be tricky because you don't want to just repeat the stuff that is on the resume, okay? And I have seen, unfortunately, some students try to get away with just copying and pasting language from their resume into the cover letter. And this is a bad idea. I mean, I know that saves time, and I know it is hard to come up with alternative ways to say stuff, but it really does look lazy. And like, that's not what a cover letter is for. I would describe the relationship between a resume and a cover letter as like the resume is the raw data, like the resume is factual, and the cover letter is where you interpret that data or interpret those facts. So it's where you explain in explicit term how your skills and experiences can help you bring value to that organization. Okay. So you want to focus on specific examples, that again go beyond what you talked about in your resume. So, and again, as many specifics as you can provide, as many, the same advice from the resume kind of applies here. If you could quantify your impact in some ways, that is also very helpful. Okay. So talking about, telling a little bit more of an extended story about a time you led a team to do something, or about a time you identified a problem at work and solved it, or a time when you exercised leadership, a time when you had to overcome a challenge, that kind of thing. Giving specific examples is a good idea. A common mistake that writers will make on cover letters is to just kind of talk about a bunch of kind of bland and general, like the soft skills are the worst. I am a team player and a great communicator, and I'm good at public speaking, and, et cetera, et cetera. In general, the rule with writing is show, don't tell. Okay, so I've given some examples here about kind of how to do that. You want to take the skills and try to pivot to something concrete. Um, so things like, in addition to my technical abilities, I also have proven my ability to articulate complex recommendations to clients, to lead teams to satisfying outcomes, and to work well under pressure, for example. Okay. And that for example is absolutely clear, is absolutely key. And like you can see up here, for example, in my position at X, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something from employment. It could be, when I was volunteering with this student group on campus. Or I've even seen students do stuff like when I was helping lead a hiking trip, to in this particular region, and we, encountered some kind of challenge or obstacle. I did this. So the point is don't just say that you have skills like strong communication or ability to work with people or stuff like that. Try to provide an example where you've demonstrated that skill. It's just much stronger and reads much better. So that's kind of the basics. This is everything that really has to go into a cover letter. But then there's a whole bunch of stuff that is kind of, you kind of want to uh, keep in mind. Okay, so first of all, get to the point. One thing I hope you noticed from the slide that showed the business letter format is that those headings take up quite a bit of room. Okay, which means that you don't have a ton of space in which to get all of this information out. Typically a cover letter takes up about the middle 2/3 of a page. You really shouldn't be going on to a second page unless you're applying for jobs in like academia and stuff, where 2-page cover letters are pretty typical. But for the most part, it should be 1 page, which means you really need to get to the point. So trying to make sure, this is something you kind of have to help students work with, trying to make sure there's not a lot of wasted sentences or wasted words. This is where you want to be really brutal about getting rid of unnecessary adjectives and adverbs, and about, culling sentences that don't really say anything or that repeat information that has already been shared. Get to the point. And again, you want to avoid like business cliches as much as possible, but also just cliches in general. And I think that listing of broad skill categories without examples is also kind of an example of a cliche. So, one other thing to keep in mind is that it is really not uncommon for people to experience kind of some, road bumps as they go through life. Somebody may have had to take some time away from school, or may have been out of the workforce for a certain period of time. If they're a little bit later, in their career, if they're not still a student, you may have changed majors several times. Although in the U.S. that's pretty typical. If somebody has experienced that kind of difficulty, and it's something that maybe shows up in certain areas of the job application, such as taking a long time to complete a bachelor's degree, like taking 6 years to complete a bachelor's degree. 5 years is really not that big of a deal. If it needs to be explained, that's fine. But encourage people not to make a big deal out of that kind of thing, specifically not to make apologies for it. I see a lot of writers basically kind of bending over backwards to apologize for things like having changed interests at one point, or having changed careers or something like that. And like people do that all the time, and it's not really necessary to apologize for it. The point is you want to look out for people framing things in negative ways when they don't have to be, either because the information doesn't need to be volunteered, or because it's not really a negative. Okay. Many cover letter advice columns and that kind of thing, career counselors will tell you to kind of try to tell a story in the cover letter if you can. I find that this is advice that sometimes leads to very long-winded cover letters that are kind of full of irrelevant stuff. I find this kind of 4-paragraph structure to be a little bit more helpful, but if there's a way to kind of tell a story of their education and career that talks about how their initial interest in a field led to this, them applying for this current position, then that's fine. And then the final piece of advice that I always give is that, yeah, you want to try to write a good cover letter. But I used to do this cover letter workshop in which I showed 2 cover letters, one which was very obviously better than the other one. Like it contained a lot more specifics. It was a lot longer. The bad one or the poorer one had a lot of cliche stuff, and like the writer was bragging about being in Mensa, which is, likely to rub some readers the wrong way. So like it was a case in which one cover letter was obviously better than the other, and I, asked the participants of the workshop to basically say who they think deserved that particular job. And of course, the surprise is that the person who wrote the worst cover letter wound up getting that job, and the person who wrote the much better cover letter didn't. And the reason is that these were 2 people applying for jobs in different fields, and the positions they were applying for were very different levels of competitiveness. And simple fact of the matter is that there is just a lot in life and in employment that you do not have control over. Sometimes you wrote a great cover letter or a great application essay, but the pool was full of people who also wrote great cover letters or had great application essays. Maybe they were just looking for somebody with a little bit more experience or with a slightly different background than what you have, a different type of degree. Maybe there were other things going on behind the scenes that again, you just don't have control over. So if you have a very anxious client in the writing center who's trying to figure out how to write the best cover letter they can because they think it's going to get them the job, absolutely help them do that. But remind them that there is a lot that is out of their control. And the best thing they can do is, again, write the best letter they can, but don't agonize about it. At a certain point, they just have to submit it. They just have to send it in and then try to move on. Apply for more jobs, do well in their study well, get good grades, all the things you're supposed to do just in life. But one of the toughest skills to learn when you are looking for a job, and I know this from experience, is being able to just accept what you can't control. Okay, so this brings us to the end. Hopefully, you have a little bit of an idea of how to kind of work through the process of writing a cover letter and also how to help somebody else do that. I'm going to place additional samples and resources up on Canvas for you guys to check out and that you're also free to show to students. Thank you very much for watching.